Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is TheSketchMonkey here. I'm here at Hard Motors in Denver once again to have a look at something very beautiful. This is the 2014 W12 E63 AMG, and the thing is, this has almost the same performance as we have in modern E63s, but I just think this looks so much better because we have this boxiness, classic Mercedes design to this styling that is sort of lacking in today's more soft design. So what we're gonna do in this video is have a look at this design, the front end, the side, the rear, the interior, and then we're gonna take this out for a drive. And it's powered by a twin turbo V8, 577 horsepower, 0 to 60 in about 3.3 seconds. So it is a very quick sedan. Let's have a look at some of the basic spec and tech of the 2014 Mercedes E63 AMG. You have a 5.5 liter twin turbo V8, putting out 577 horsepower and 590 pound-feet of torque. It comes with 4MATIC all-wheel drive connected to a 7-speed automatic transmission. 0 to 60 miles per hour takes 3.3 seconds with a top speed of 186 miles per hour. Fuel economy comes in at 16 city, 23 highway, and the price for this is $35,500. Now in 2014, the E-Class got a substantial facelift. It's probably one of the biggest facelifts that I've ever seen in a production car, and this is the result of that. And I think this looks a lot better than the pre-facelift, which definitely looks more dated than this, because what Mercedes did here in 2014 is they started to implement the graphics that we see in today's Mercedes, meaning that we have this lower part of the AMG version with the black fins here, but it's a lot more static than what they are today. So you don't reach up all the way in this area. We still have a proper bumper for this design. So it's a great mix of the old style Mercedes with the smiley grille, for example, not upside down frowning like we have today, which has this graceful smile to it still, and modern graphics. So we have old proportions with modern graphics. That's exactly what I want to see, specifically the larger sedans such as the E-Class. Let's have a look at some of the key graphics of the front end. For example, these headlights. So these are some very special high beams in this generation E-Class. You can have the high beams on at all times, and it will cut out the areas where you have oncoming traffic, or if you have a car in front of you, it's not going to have the high beams on those specific objects as they're moving, which is very cool for 2014. And you also have these two LED strips inside here, this being the E-Class. Right after this, the new C-Class came out, which has one strip. The E-Class always had two strips in this stripes in this generations, and then you have the S-Class having three LED stripes. So that's how you can separate the models just by looking at the headlights themselves. Then you have these crystal LED pieces in here, the functions as the indicator light, looking very nice and super clean. Now I want to hear your opinion. Do you prefer this generation of the E-Class E63 AMG, the facelifted, the W212, or do you prefer the newer ones where you have the same type of styling? This area just takes up a whole lot more space, and it doesn't have the clear separation between the top half of the graphics, being the headlights, and this beautiful grille in the middle with the massive Mercedes logo in the middle. It doesn't have the same separation with this bumper piece like we have in this case, from the top half to the lower section of the intakes in the bottom. Now coming around to the side view of the W212 E-Class, and here you can clearly see, if you compare this design to today's design, which has a lot smoother, specifically the roofline has more of a curvature in this area, this just feels a lot more structured. And one detail that is very interesting on this generation E-Class is the shoulder line. So you have this, which up until pretty much all the way from the front fender all the way back looks like it is the only shoulder line. It looks like a proper sharp line that cuts through the entire length of the car, but when you go back to this area, it fades in this fuel cap here, and then it comes back in two other shoulder lines here. So we have a triple action shoulder line going on in this specific area right here before this one fades out. Now I've said this many times before, I think Mercedes is the company that does wheel design the best out of all manufacturers out there still today, and pretty much back in 2014 as well, because I love these wheels. Yes, of course they are black in this case, but sometimes when you have a black wheels with a white car, it feels natural to have black wheels, even though they kind of hide the design here. So we have two 55 19s in the front end, we have two 85 19s in the rear. So we don't have a staggered setup here, and I love that. It would be cool to see what this will look like with 20s, but honestly, 19s feel like they fill out the wheelhouses properly in this case, and it's also going to be a lot more comfortable than 20s. Now, one detail that I'm not so sure about when it comes to this specific generation E-Class is the integration of the hood, because the hood here has a very large cut line to it, and it feels like it just sits like a cake on top of the rest of the body. It doesn't feel really well integrated in the rest of the side in the front fender, but it's just a minor detail, and it gets a lot better the closer to the front end we come into connection to the front headlights. I do love the AMG wide fenders that we have both in the front and also in the rear. This one is missing some carbon fiber options. You could get the carbon fiber package for this, which gives you some carbon fiber pieces in the front end. And also this gloss black side skirt is also carbon fiber if you decide to go with that package, which this one lacks. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about proportions and why I prefer these proportions. Look at the roofline, how almost straight it is up here. It doesn't curve down too soon like it does in the current generation E-Class, and have a look at the lines in the body. We have these two lines almost going parallel up to the back end, but they have this sloping upward line to them, creating some forward movement in the design. Just looking at it from a side view, you also have these black side mirrors with the indicator lights integrated in the side mirrors itself, looking very clean and nice. And yes, there are some chrome details on here. For example, this V8 bi-turbo badge. You also have some chrome going around the greenhouse up here and the door handles. But in this case, this being a Mercedes E-Class, yes, it is the AMG version, but I honestly think that some chrome, just add a splash of chrome to the exterior, it suits this car overall. All right, so coming around to the 3/4 rear view of the Mercedes E-Class 2014 E63 AMG. The stateliness that we have in the front end and in the side, it comes back around here because you can see just how horizontal and vertical this rear end is. I also prefer these taillights, how they wrap around the corner here. This back end, to me, feels almost like a good modernization of the W124 E-Class, one of the all-time great Mercedes has ever made, and it feels like this is a good interpretation of that in 2014. Now, when we look at the graphics of the rear end, the same thing goes here like we have in the front end. I feel like this has all these modern features that we see on AMG versions, but with the shape of old Mercedeses. For example, look at the rear portion of this design. First of all, we do have a proper bumper here, so thankfully bumpers were still a thing in 2014, and it adds to this classic design in the rear end of this E63. Moving further down, this integration of the diffuser and the quad tailpipes having the same shape like we have today with the AMG exhausts all in black, this feels like a modern piece that could be on a 2023 model year, but it has more of a structure to it, suiting the overall design of this car. And of course, this being a proper sedan, first of all, we do have this spoiler up top. I do kind of wish that this was in carbon fiber. The reason being, we have the black graphics down here. I also wish that this diffuser was in carbon fiber, but I want to have some black piece up here to connect with the lower graphics, and what better piece than this trunk spoiler here. But as I said, this being a proper sedan, we have the 3-box design of this E-Class, meaning that we do have a proper trunk here as well. And look at that classic Mercedes layout. This is even power closing, so you just push that button and it will close itself up. Very nicely done. Welcome to the beautiful interior of the 2014 E63 AMG. Let's fire it up because it is, as always, summertime, getting pretty hot here. We are in comfort, so it should hopefully be quiet enough, even though it is a big V8 AMG up there. Starting up top, we do have a nice housing for the infotainment screen. It feels like we don't necessarily need bigger screens than this, and when you have small screens like this, it is very, very easy to integrate it in the overall interior, just like we have here. A nice housing for the infotainment screen, and this is not a touch screen. You have this control to navigate whatever is going on in the screen, which works well. I mean, it's an old screen, it's not really up to date. And if I were to buy this car, I would probably always use my phone anyway for the navigation, for example. And then we have a super clean integration of the gauge cluster with the big Mercedes speedometer in the middle, as usual when it comes to Mercedes, and the smaller tachometer to the right side with the V8 bi-turbo stamped on the background, and you have the fuel gauge and the temperature gauge on the left side. And in addition to that, you also have a small round digital display in the middle. And honestly, if I had to pick what era of car interiors were the best, I'm probably gonna go with the 2014 to 2018 era, because we still have some analog feel in the interior. For example, all these buttons for the climate controls, but we also have some implementation of some digitalized stuff, such as the screen here. And this is the perfect balance for me between analog pieces and digital implementation of new technology. Look at this beautiful analog watch that we have sitting in the middle. It doesn't really feel AMG to have it in here, but at the same time, it does feel very E-Class to have an analog clock like this sitting in the middle. These vents very easily adjustable. They have some nice styling to it with this silver outline, and you can see the fins, so it's very easy to see exactly where the air is going to blow out from. Further down, you have all these buttons that are probably obsolete today for the telephone, and you have, I don't know what this is. It's a number pad for maybe your phone or something like that, and you have this CD slot right above it with the volume control being located right here in the center, and it does have a very high quality feel to this knob. It feels very Mercedes. Further down, you do have the heated and cooled seats for both front seats, and you have this button for the rear shade, so you can raise up the shade in the back. If your passengers are getting a little too warm back there, just press this button and give them some shade in the back. You can also fold the headrests in the back by pressing this button. You have the hazard, you have an eco button, you have the parking sensors, and the heated and cool seats for the passenger side. Further down, this is all the controls for the climate control settings, and just look how simple this is to use. You have a toggle for the temperature, you have a toggle for the fan speed, and where you want the air to blow out from, and that's pretty much all you need in a car like this. Now, 2014 is still too early for implementation of wireless charging pads, so we don't have that in this car, but you still have in 2014 a cigarette lighter and an ashtray where the charging pad is normally at today. Looking at the center console here, and here you have the drive mode select. So you have Comfort, you have Sport, you have Sport Plus. It's gonna open up the exhaust a little bit, or you have Manual. So that means that you're using the paddles, obviously. But for now, I'm gonna keep it in Comfort. I'm gonna put it in Sport Plus when we take this out for a drive and see what this is all about. You have the traction control button and the suspension button. So you have Sport, Sport Plus, or Comfort when it comes to the suspension. Let's just put it in Sport Plus for now. Then you have this AMG button, and this is your own settings. So you can configure this. It's sort of like the BMW M buttons that you have red up here on the steering wheel. That's exactly what this does. Just configure it the way you want it, and just press the AMG button, and it's going to go into those settings. We already talked about this dial. This is for controlling the infotainment screen. In the middle here, you have a slider, and underneath you have two pretty rather small cup holders, but they do what they're supposed to do. I'm going to cover that up for now. And this design of the armrest pad is pretty interesting. It stretches out further on the driver's side, so the driver gets a longer pad while the passenger gets a little shorter one. And you can open this up, and you have a rather big storage compartment down here with some USBs. Perfect, since we don't have Apple CarPlay or anything like that. You can just plug in your USB, your phone here, and use that as a map if you want to. Moving on to this steering wheel. Now, Mercedes today, they do very nice looking steering wheels. So I do think this is a nice steering wheel back in 2014 as well. My favorite designs of wheels for the exterior and steering wheels today are coming from Mercedes. So this has a flat bottom steering wheel. It's all leather wrapped. You have the controls for the radio settings here in the voice command on the right spoke, and you have the controls for the round display in the gauge cluster on the left side of the spoke. Pretty simple layout, nothing too complex, and it doesn't give me a headache. On the left side of the steering wheel, you do have these similar vents that we have here and similar to what we have over there, and you also have the settings for the lighting, and the parking brake is also located down here. Now, looking at these seats, these are gorgeous looking AMG seats. They have both some luxury feel to it, but when you look at these bolstering, you do know that there's something special going on in the car that these seats are in, and of course it is the E63 AMG, so you got to have some proper bolstering to this. You have the AMG logo in the middle, and one really cool thing, in addition to the functions here that you have moving back and forth, the traditional Mercedes seat adjustments on the door, you also have more seat adjustments here. So you can really dial in your seat position and exactly what you want this to feel like. For example, the bolstering, you can adjust it here. It's very cool. I've never noticed that before in any Mercedes. The paddles of the steering wheel feels very tight still. They have a short snap to them. I do, however, think that they are a little bit too small. I want to have them extend further so we can see both above the spoke of the steering wheel and below it. We can see the spoke sticking up and down. Looking up top, we do have a standard size sunroof that you can open up if you want to, but for now, as always, I'm gonna keep this closed. And last but not least, we do have a proper size glove box in the 2014 E63. So with that said, this being a Mercedes sedan, we have to check out the back seat. And now I'm in a pretty comfortable driving position, so let's see if I can fit behind my own driving position. All right guys, jumping in to the back seat, and I'm 6'1", and I fit perfectly fine back here thanks to these indents that we have in the seat in front of me. We also have this pocket down here that feels nice, and you have two vents back here. No climate control settings in the back, but you do have a 12-volt cigarette outlet here. And if you decide to fold down the center armrest, you're gonna get two cup holders underneath this whole complexion. It's about that time. We're taking the 2014 Mercedes E63 AMG out for a short drive. So what do we have under the hood? Twin turbo 5.5 liter V8 putting out 577 horsepower. 0 to 60 in about 3.3 seconds. Can you imagine that 10 years ago in a full-size sedan? That's what AMG is all about. And as I said, this design is just, for me, the perfect balance between modern graphics with the old classic Mercedes sedan proportions like we have in the W212 right here. And this one has done 93,000 miles. But the thing is, everything in here works. All the electronics work. The seats look fantastic. It doesn't have a lot of wear and tear. This has been taken care of properly. And it also goes to show the Mercedes, I mean, the build quality of a Mercedes, as we all know, I think specifically in this era, was really top notch. All right, so we are in sport now. Let's pop it in to manual, and let's see what this 7-speed is all about. I've heard some people like it, some people don't like it, but we're gonna see what it feels like compared to modern Benzes. Oh, this AMG V8 rumble just never gets old. So this gearbox is a little bit slower than what we're used to today in 2023, but it's still pretty quick for what it is. It shifts pretty fast when you're upshifting. Let's see downshifts. Yeah, downshifts are fast too, and they have this nice click to them. They have a solid click when you're using the pedals, which feels really good. So 93,000 miles. There are just one or two minor rattles in here when you go over some rough bumps in the road, but other than that, it feels solid. It feels very German and well built, obviously. Oh man, this one goes. I think AMG has it all. The handling of this thing is also fantastic because this E63, compared to the previous generation before this, actually has 4MATIC all-wheel drive, which means that you have a lot more grip in the corners, and also having 577 horsepower, you kind of want that grip. That was I wouldn't call it a problem in the previous generation before this E-Class E63 or E55, but you just couldn't put the power down in the same way as you can when you have this all-wheel drive. thing I love the most about AMGs is that it feels like a muscle car, but the German equivalent, obviously, since it is a Mercedes, meaning that it is a muscle car, but it has been refined in the details, the interior details, the drivetrain, everything is refined. But when it comes to the driving experience, it feels like a proper muscle car, and I love that mix. And I don't think anyone else does it as well as Mercedes does with their AMG models, specifically these twin-turbo V8s. It just goes and it sounds so good. I'm really gonna miss the V8s. I hope they will come back at some point, now that we do have the new C63, for example, being a 4-cylinder. Well-kept examples like this, I actually think that they're gonna at least hold their value, since they are the last of the V8s, and if not go up in value. So we do have a bit of a tunnel here. So let's bring the window down and let's see what this is all about. Huge thanks again to Rev Hard Motors here in Denver for providing this beautiful E63 for me to review for you guys today. If you're interested in JDM cars specifically, go and check them out. I'm going to link it down in the description. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.